The stars had always been there, waiting. For hundreds of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. In 2247, they finally got their answer. Captain Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the screens show impossible colors as the ship tore through space faster than light. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. This was it, humanity's first journey beyond their solar system, the first step into a universe they knew nothing about. The ship dropped back into normal space near Alpha Centauri. Jack's heart pounded as the sensors came alive. There were signals everywhere, radio waves, energy signatures, things that could only come from advanced technology. They were not alone. They had never been alone. "Captain, we're being scanned," Lieutenant Karen Bell said from the sensor station. Her voice was tight with tension. Before Jack could respond, a massive ship appeared on the view screen. It was 3 times the size of the Terra Nova, built from materials that seemed to shimmer and change color. The design was alien, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. A transmission came through. The computer worked for several seconds. Then a voice spoke in perfect English. "Human vessel, you will hold your position. A representative of the Galactic Council will speak with you shortly." Jack looked at his crew. They had trained for this moment, planned for it, but nothing could truly prepare them for the reality. They were meeting another intelligent species. The implications were enormous. The alien who appeared on their screen called himself Ambassador Zekthar. He belonged to a species called the Vryn. His body was covered in what looked like crystal formations that caught the light. He had 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on his face. When he moved, the crystals on his skin made soft chiming sounds. "Humans," Zekthar said. And Jack heard the dismissal in his voice immediately. "Your species has been observed. The Galactic Council has made a decision regarding your status." Jack straightened in his chair. "We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship with other species." Zekthar made a sound that the translator couldn't quite process. It might have been laughter. "Your intentions are irrelevant. What matters is your capability, and you have been found lacking." The ambassador began to list humanity's failures. Humans were weak, their bodies soft and easily damaged. They had no natural armor like the Vryn, no telepathic abilities like the Mindari, no biological weapons like the Scar. They were slow, fragile, and short-lived compared to most galactic species. "You may not join the Galactic Council," Zekthar continued. "Your species is too primitive, too violent, and frankly, too inferior. You lack the basic requirements for membership." Jack felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Every species has to start somewhere. We've achieved faster than light travel. We've built a civilization across our entire solar system. We can learn, we can grow." "Perhaps," Zekthar said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. "But that is not our concern. The Council offers you a choice. You may remain in your home system under our protection. We will ensure no hostile species troubles you, provided you accept certain limitations. Or you may refuse our protection and face the galaxy alone. I assure you, human, you would not survive long." The transmission ended. Jack sat in silence, processing what had just happened. Humanity had reached for the stars and been told they weren't good enough. They were being offered a cage, dressed up as safety. Back on Earth, Admiral Ryan Bennett received the full report from the Terra Nova. He sat in his office at the Terran Defense Command, reading Jack's detailed notes about the encounter. Beside him, Dr. Lisa Crawford reviewed the data they had gathered on the Council species. "They're right about one thing," Lisa said quietly. She pulled up holographic displays showing the various alien species they detected. "Biologically, we're at a disadvantage. The Vryn have skin that can stop most energy weapons. The Korthax are 3 meters tall, with 4 arms, and incredible strength. The Mindari can communicate telepathically across vast distances. We don't have any of that." Ryan stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of the city stretching to the horizon. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware that the universe had just told them they weren't good enough. "We have something they don't," Ryan said finally. What's that? We've spent our entire history being the underdog. Every challenge we've faced, we've overcome not by being stronger, but by being smarter. We adapt. We innovate. We refuse to quit. Lisa joined him at the window. The council won't see it that way. They've built their entire society on the idea that natural advantages determine worth. To them, we're just another weak species to be managed. Then we'll prove them wrong. The news of humanity's rejection spread across Earth within hours. Some people were afraid. Others were angry. But most felt something else entirely. They felt determined. Captain Jack Morrison didn't return to Earth. Against direct orders, he took the Terra Nova deeper into Council space. He needed to know more about these aliens who had dismissed his species so casually. He needed to understand their strengths and their weaknesses. Over the next 3 months, Jack and his crew gathered information. They observed Council ships, studied their technology, and learned about galactic politics. What they discovered was troubling. The galaxy operated on a strict hierarchy. Strong species dominated weak ones. Those without natural weapons or defenses became subjects or slaves. The Council maintained order, but only for species they deemed worthy. Everyone else existed at their mercy. Jack sent encrypted reports back to Earth. Admiral Ryan Bennett compiled the information and began forming a strategy. If the galaxy respected only strength, then humanity would have to show strength, but not the kind the aliens expected. Dr. Lisa Crawford made a breakthrough while studying the Council species. They're predictable, she told Ryan during one of their planning sessions. Every species fights the same way they've always fought. The Korthax use overwhelming firepower. The Vryn rely on their shields and energy weapons. The Scar use biological warfare. They haven't had to innovate in centuries because their natural advantages have always been enough. And we have no natural advantages, Ryan said, understanding dawning. Which means, we have no set pattern. We can be unpredictable. Exactly. They'll expect us to fight like a species. With our limitations would fight. Defensive. Cautious. Trying to survive. They won't expect us to be aggressive or creative. Ryan smiled for the first time since the rejection. Then, let's give them something they don't expect. To Menstig, but before they could begin preparing, a new transmission arrived from Council space. This one wasn't from the diplomatic Vryn. It came from the Korthax Dominion, one of the Council's most powerful military forces. Warmaster Gorath appeared on screens across Earth. He was enormous, with 4 muscular arms and skin like armored plates. His eyes were black and cold. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Humans, you have been given the Council's offer, and you have not responded. Your hesitation is seen as disrespect. The Korthax Dominion will now present terms that are not negotiable. The ultimatum was brutal. Humanity would surrender all territory beyond Earth's solar system. They would provide tribute in the form of minerals, water, and 1 million humans for labor conscription. They had 1 Earth month to comply. If you refuse, Gorath said, his massive frame filling the screen, we will take what we want by force. Your fragile ships will be destroyed. Your colonies will be occupied. Your people will learn their place in the natural order. The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the way of the galaxy. The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. President Daniel Hayes called an emergency meeting. Military leaders, scientists, and government officials gathered to discuss their options. The analysis was grim. Earth had 12 warships, and they were primitive compared to galactic standards. The Korthax had hundreds of vessels, each powerful enough to destroy a city with a single shot. In a direct confrontation, humanity would be wiped out. Admiral Ryan Bennett stood before the holographic display, studying the Korthax warships that Captain Jack Morrison had recorded during his unauthorized scouting missions. The vessels were massive, covered in thick armor plating, bristling with weapon systems that could level mountains. They looked unstoppable. They're built like fortresses, Lieutenant Commander Amy Parker said, joining him at the display. She had been assigned to tactical analysis, and she'd spent weeks studying every scrap of data they had on Council military forces. Ryan nodded. "Tell me what you see." Amy manipulated the display, rotating the Korthax ship to show different angles. Heavy armor, powerful shields, massive firepower. Their tactics are straightforward. They form a wall of battle, advance slowly, and overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower. It's worked for them for over 200 years. What else? Amy paused, then highlighted the engine systems. They're slow, really slow. Their ships are so heavy that they can barely maneuver. They don't need to, usually. Their enemies either run or get destroyed, trying to fight head-on. So what happens if an enemy doesn't fight head-on? Amy's eyes widened as she understood. They wouldn't know how to respond. Their entire doctrine is built around direct confrontation. Round 1. Over the next 6 weeks, Earth's shipyards transformed. They didn't build bigger warships to match the Korthax. They built something completely different. The new vessels were smaller, faster, and stripped of heavy armor. What they lacked in protection, they made up for in speed and weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Lisa Crawford worked with the engineering teams to develop new systems. She focused on one key insight: that humanity brings creatures evolved on a world where survival meant constant adaptation. Humans were natural problem solvers. "We can't match their shields with our current energy weapons," Lisa explained during a briefing. "But shields are designed to stop specific types of attacks: energy weapons, missiles, plasma bolts. They've never had to deal with simple kinetic projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed." The railgun project received top priority. These weapons used electromagnetic force to launch solid metal projectiles at incredible velocities. No explosives, no complex guidance systems, just mass moving very, very fast. The Korthax shields wouldn't know how to handle them, but Admiral Ryan Bennett knew weapons alone wouldn't be enough. They needed a new way of fighting. A doctrine that played to human strengths, rather than trying to match alien advantages. Captain Jack Morrison returned to Earth to take command of the newly refitted USS Valiant. The ship looked nothing like the massive dreadnoughts the Korthax fielded. It was sleek, fast, and loaded with experimental systems. In the hangar bay sat 200 autonomous drones, each controlled by advanced AI. "The Korthax expect us to meet them ship to ship," Jack said during the planning session. "They expect us to try to match their firepower. We won't. We'll swarm them like insects. Hit them from every angle, blind them, confuse them, and tear them apart piece by piece." Lieutenant Commander Amy Parker had been promoted to captain and given command of the USS Apollo, another of the new fast attack vessels. She studied the battle plans with a critical eye. "This is risky. We're betting everything on the assumption that they won't adapt." "They've had no reason to adapt for 2 centuries, Ryan replied. "Species either submit or die. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to play by their rules." The Korthax gave humanity 1 month. They used every second. Shipyards worked around the clock. Crews trained in new tactics that emphasized speed, coordination, and unpredictability. Scientists developed electronic warfare systems designed to jam and confuse alien sensors. President Daniel Hayes addressed the world on the final day before the deadline. His face appeared on screens across Earth and every human colony. His voice was calm but firm. "The Korthax Dominion has demanded our surrender. They believe we are weak because we lack natural weapons and armor. They believe might makes right. Today, we show them they're wrong. Humanity has never been strong because of what we are. We're strong because of what we refuse to stop becoming. We adapt. We overcome. We survive. And we do not surrender." War Master Gorath led his fleet personally. 300 Korthax warships, arranged in perfect formation, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of humanity's Tau Ceti colony. The settlement, called New Horizon, orbited a massive gas giant. 5,000 colonists worked there, mostly families. It was humanity's most vulnerable outpost. Gorath chose it deliberately. He wanted the people of Earth to watch their colonists die. He wanted them to understand the price of defiance. "Open a channel to the colony," Gorath ordered. When the connection established, he spoke with absolute certainty. "Humans of New Horizon, you have 1 hour to evacuate to the planet below. After that, we will destroy your station and everything on it. Your deaths will teach Earth the cost of refusing the natural order." But the response didn't come from the colony. It came from the clouds of the gas giant below. Captain Jack Morrison sat in the command chair of the USS Valiant, hidden in the upper atmosphere where the Korthax sensors couldn't detect them. Beside him, 3 other fast attack ships waited in silence. They had been there for 2 weeks, preparing for this moment. "All ships, this is Valiant Actual," Jack said calmly. "Execute Plan Alpha. Show them what happens when you underestimate humans." The 4 ships erupted from the gas giant's atmosphere like sharks rising from deep water. But they didn't head straight for the Korthax fleet. Instead, they launched their drones, 200 autonomous fighters scattered in every direction, each one programmed with sophisticated AI that allowed them to coordinate without constant communication. They filled space with false sensor signatures, jamming signals, and electronic noise. To the Korthax sensors, it looked like they were being attacked by thousands of ships. "What is this?" Gorath roared. His sensor operators scrambled to identify the targets, but the readings made no sense. The contacts appeared and disappeared, merged and split, moved in patterns that defied prediction. Then the drones struck. Each one carried a single weapon, a nuclear-pumped laser. They weren't powerful enough to destroy a Korthax ship, but they didn't need to be. They targeted sensors, communication arrays, and weapon tracking systems. One by one, the mighty Korthax warships went blind. Gorath tried to restore order, but his communication network was in chaos. The jamming was too strong. His ships couldn't coordinate. They started firing wildly, hitting nothing but empty space or, in some cases, each other. "All ships, concentrate fire on Sector 7, Gorath ordered. But only half his fleet received the command. The rest were operating independently, trying to defend themselves against an enemy they couldn't track. That's when Captain Amy Parker made her move. The USS Apollo and 2 sister ships had positioned themselves on the far side of New Horizon, using the colony's mass to hide from sensors. Now they accelerated to attack speed, their railguns charging. "Target their communication ships first," Amy ordered. "Cut off their ability to coordinate." The railguns fired. Solid metal slugs, each weighing several tons, shot through space at 20% the speed of light. The Korthax shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, barely slowed them down. The projectiles punched through armor like paper, tearing through critical systems. 3 Korthax command vessels exploded in rapid succession. Gorath watched in disbelief as his carefully organized fleet descended into chaos. His ships were more powerful than the human vessels. His weapons could destroy them with a single hit, but he couldn't hit what he couldn't see, couldn't coordinate what he couldn't communicate with. Commander Greg Holland coordinated the final element of the defense from New Horizon itself. The mining colony had massive ore processing systems, designed to sort and launch refined materials to transport ships. Over the past 2 weeks, the colonists had converted them into weapons. "Launch Package 1, Greg said calmly. The colony's mass drivers fired, hurling asteroids into carefully calculated trajectories. The Korthax fleet, blind and confused, never saw them coming. The asteroids weren't large enough to destroy the warships, but they didn't need to be. They smashed into antenna arrays, shattered external weapon mounts, and created more chaos in an already desperate situation. For 6 hours, the battle raged. The Korthax tried every tactic they knew, but all of them required coordination and clear sensor data. They had neither. The human forces danced through their formations, striking from unexpected angles, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. Finally, War Master Gorath made a decision that no Korthax commander had made in living memory. He ordered a retreat. The news of the Battle of New Horizon traveled through the galaxy faster than any ship could fly. Within hours, Every species in Council space had seen the recordings. The mighty Korthax Dominion, one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy, had been defeated by humans. The weak species, the ones with soft skin and no natural weapons. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session on their homeworld of Nexus Prime. Ambassador Zekthar of the Vryn stood before the assembled representatives, his crystalline skin flashing with agitation. "This cannot be allowed to stand," he declared. "The humans have violated the natural order. They attacked a Council enforcement fleet. They must be punished." But not everyone agreed. In the back of the chamber, Ambassador Velana of the Savari watched the debate with quiet interest. The Savari were a small species, barely a meter tall, with gray skin and large eyes. They had joined the Council 50 years ago, but only as junior members. Nobody took them seriously. Velana had watched the battle recordings 3 times. She saw something in the human tactics that others missed. They fought like creatures who had spent their entire existence as prey, developing cunning and creativity to survive against stronger predators. It was beautiful in its efficiency. War Master Gorath, stripped of his command and facing a military tribunal, sent a final message to the Korthax leadership before his imprisonment. In it, he wrote words that would be studied for generations. "Do not underestimate the humans based on their biology. They are not strong because of what they are. They are strong because they refuse to accept limitations. They see a problem, and they solve it. They face impossible odds and they find a way. This makes them more dangerous than any species we have encountered." But the Council's leadership didn't listen. They saw the human victory as a fluke, a lucky combination of circumstances that wouldn't happen again. The Vryn and several other major powers began assembling a joint fleet. They would crush humanity and restore the proper order. On Earth, the mood was different. The victory at New Horizon had proven something important. Humanity could fight and win. But Admiral Ryan Bennett knew that one battle didn't win a war. "They'll come back," he told President Daniel Hayes during a private meeting. "Next time, with more ships and better preparation. We need allies." "Who would ally with us?" Hayes asked. "The Council has made it clear we're not welcome." "Not the Council," Ryan said. "But there are other species. Ones who've been dismissed and underestimated, just like us." Ambassador Velana arrived at Earth 3 weeks after the battle. Her small diplomatic ship landed at the new spaceport in Geneva. President Hayes and Dr. Lisa Crawford met her personally, unsure what to expect. Velana was even smaller in person, barely reaching Lisa's waist. But her large eyes held intelligence and something else. "Hope, President Hayes," Velana said through her translator. "I come with a proposal from my people. We watched what you did at New Horizon with great interest. You fought like the creatures on your world called wasps. Many small attacks creating chaos. It was brilliant." "Thank you," Hayes said carefully. "But I'm curious why you're here. The Savari are part of the Council." "We are part of the Council because we had no choice," Velana replied. 50 years ago, the Vryn offered us protection or conquest. We chose protection, but it came with a price. We serve them. We provide them with our technical expertise and receive scraps in return. We are tired of being underestimated." Over the following days, Velana shared information that changed humanity's understanding of galactic politics. The Council wasn't a unified government. It was a collection of powerful species who maintained control through a combination of military might and careful management of weaker species. Those weaker species resented their status, but had never seen an alternative. "You have shown there is another way," Velana said. "You refused to accept your place in the hierarchy. You fought and won. Other species are watching and wondering if they could do the same." Dr. Lisa Crawford spent hours talking with Velana, learning about the different species and their relationships. She discovered something fascinating. Many of the Council's member species had similar complaints. They were used for their resources or skills but never given real respect or power. "What if we reached out to them?" Lisa suggested to Admiral Ryan Bennett. "Not as conquerors, but as partners. We could share what we've learned." Ryan considered it. "You mean, share our military tactics?" Not just tactics. Our way of thinking. The council species are stuck in patterns that have worked for centuries. They can't imagine fighting any other way, but we can teach them to think creatively, to adapt, to question assumptions. The idea was risky. If they armed and trained other species, those species might turn against Earth. But Ryan saw the potential. A coalition of underestimated species could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Captain Amy Parker was assigned to lead the training program. She set up a facility on Luna, Earth's moon, and sent out quiet invitations. The response surprised everyone. Within 2 months, representatives from 12 different species arrived. The Scivari came in numbers, eager to learn. The Delphine, an aquatic species who had been exploited for their ability to process certain rare materials, sent their military officers. Even some Korthax dissidents, disgusted by their leadership's failures, requested permission to study human tactics. Amy stood before the first class and looked at the diverse group of beings. Some were smaller than humans, some larger. Some breathed oxygen, others required different atmospheres and wore environmental suits. But they all shared one thing. They were tired of being told they were inferior. "Welcome," Amy said. "I'm going to teach you how humans fight. But first, I need you to forget everything you know about warfare." She pulled up a holographic display showing a traditional council battle. Ships lined up in formation, advanced toward each other, and exchanged fire until one side was destroyed or retreated. It was predictable, straightforward, and required superior firepower to win. "This is how the strong fight," Amy continued. "They rely on their advantages. Better weapons, stronger shields, more ships. But what happens when you don't have those advantages?" A Scivari officer raised his hand. "You lose." "No," Amy said firmly. "You change the game. You find a different way to win. Let me show you what I mean." She spent the next weeks teaching them everything. Not just tactics, but the thinking behind them. How to analyze an enemy's strengths and turn them into weaknesses. How to use terrain and timing to multiply force. How to coordinate independent units without rigid command structures. How to accept that sometimes the best plan was no plan at all, just clear objectives and the freedom to achieve them however necessary. Captain Jack Morrison joined the teaching effort, focusing on space combat. He showed them recordings of the Battle of New Horizon, breaking down every decision. "The Korthax expected us to be afraid," Jack explained. "They expected us to defend the colony from a distance, trying to keep our ships safe. Instead, we hid in the gas giant and struck from below. They never considered we might be that aggressive because in their experience, weak species are always defensive." A Delphane officer asked the question many were thinking. "But what if they adapt? What if they learn from their mistakes?" "Then we adapt again," Jack said simply. "That's the point. We're not trying to find one perfect tactic that always works. We're building a mindset that allows us to constantly evolve. The moment you stop adapting is the moment you become predictable." Dr. Lisa Crawford worked with the scientists and engineers from the various species. She shared human research methods, problem-solving techniques, and collaborative approaches. Many of the alien scientists had never been encouraged to question established knowledge or try unorthodox solutions. "On Earth, we have a saying," Lisa told them. "If at first you don't succeed, try again. But we also have another one that's just as important. If at first you don't succeed, try something different." Innovation requires both persistence and flexibility. While the training program continued, Ambassador Velana helped facilitate contacts with other species. The network grew slowly but steadily. The Chiric, an insectoid species, sent observers. The Drell, silicon-based beings from high-gravity worlds, expressed interest. Even some factions within major council species began quietly reaching out. President Daniel Hayes watched the network form with both hope and concern. "We're creating something that could reshape the entire galaxy," he said to Admiral Ryan Bennett. "But we're also painting a target on our backs. The Council won't tolerate this for long. They're already assembling a fleet," Ryan confirmed. Intelligence reports suggest the Vryn and Korthax are putting aside their rivalries to deal with us. They're calling it a peacekeeping force, but we know better. They're coming to crush us and make an example of anyone who supported us. How long do we have? 3 months, maybe 4. Hayes made a decision. Then we use that time to finish what we started. We can't build enough ships to match them, but we can build enough alliances. The Terran Compact was formed during a secret meeting on Earth. 23 species signed the initial agreement. It was a simple document, just 3 core principles. No conquest, no slavery, no claiming superiority based on biology. Everything else could be negotiated. The Compact didn't have massive fleets or advanced technology. What it had was something more powerful. It had an idea, the idea that strength came from cooperation, that diversity was an advantage, and that everyone deserved the chance to determine their own fate. When the Council discovered what was happening, their reaction was swift and severe. Ambassador Zekthar delivered an ultimatum. The human alliance would disband immediately. All non-Council ships would leave Earth space. Humanity would accept Council oversight and limitations. They had 2 weeks to comply. Admiral Ryan Bennett gathered the compact fleet at the edge of Earth's solar system. It wasn't much. 40 ships total, a mix of human vessels and refitted ships from a dozen other species. They faced a Council armada of over 500 warships. The odds were worse than New Horizon, much worse. But Ryan looked at the diverse fleet and saw something the Council didn't. He saw species who had been told they weren't good enough, who had been dismissed and controlled and limited, now standing together and refusing to back down. Captain Jack Morrison commanded the Valiant, now designated the flagship. On his view screen, he could see ships from the Savari, Delphine, Chirrut, and others. Some were barely armed. Some, the Council fleet, held position at the edge of Earth's solar system, 500 warships against 40. War Master Korvan expected the human alliance to scatter or surrender. Instead, they held their formation, waiting. Inside the Vryn dreadnought, Korvan studied the sensor readings. The human vessels were positioned in a loose sphere rather than a traditional line. Their smaller allied ships mixed throughout, creating no clear targets of priority. It was strange. Inefficient by Council standards. They're trying to confuse us, his tactical officer said. It won't work. We have overwhelming superiority. But Korvan had read the reports from New Horizon. He knew Gorath's warnings, even if the Council leadership had dismissed them. Humans didn't fight like other species. They were unpredictable. That made them dangerous. Advance slowly, Korvan ordered. Maintain formation integrity. Watch for their drone attacks. The Council fleet moved forward, a wall of power and advanced technology. Every ship was larger and better armed than anything the Compact fielded. By every logical measure, this should be a massacre. Admiral Ryan Bennett watched from Earth's Defense Command Center. He couldn't be on a ship for this battle. He needed to coordinate the larger strategy, and that required being connected to Earth's military infrastructure. They're being cautious, Captain Amy Parker observed. She stood beside Ryan, commanding the tactical coordination. They learned from the Korthax failure. Good, Ryan said. Let them be cautious. Let them think they understand what's coming. Captain Jack Morrison held position in the Valiant, right at the center of the compact formation. Around him, ships from 23 different species waited for orders. They had trained together for 3 months, learning not just human tactics, but how to fight as a unified force despite their differences. Captain, the Council fleet is in range, Lieutenant Karen Bell reported. Jack opened a secure channel to the compact ships. All vessels. Remember your training. Trust your instincts. Don't try to match their strength. Be water, not stone. Execute Plan Delta. The compact fleet suddenly scattered. Ships broke formation and accelerated in different directions, some diving toward the inner solar system, others climbing above the orbital plane, still others spreading wide to the flanks. Within seconds, the neat sphere had become chaos. Korvan watched in confusion. What are they doing? Are they fleeing? Negative, sir. They're spreading out, moving to surround us. Impossible. They don't have the numbers to surround us. But the human plan wasn't about surrounding in the traditional sense. It was about forcing the Council fleet to divide their attention across a massive volume of space. Every Council ship had to watch multiple directions at once. Their overwhelming numbers suddenly became a coordination problem. The Savari ships struck first. Small and fast, they launched missiles from long range, then immediately changed vectors. The missiles weren't powerful enough to damage Council ships significantly, but they forced the enemy to activate shields and point defenses, energy that would be needed later. Then the Delphine vessels released clouds of metallic chaff into space, creating massive sensor shadows. Council ships started losing track of smaller contacts. The perfect sensor picture they relied on became murky and uncertain. "Sir, we're detecting multiple fast-moving contacts," the tactical officer reported. They matched the profile of the drones used at New Horizon. Corvan had prepared for this. Deploy countermeasures. Launch our own autonomous fighters. The Council had developed anti-drone systems specifically for this battle. Advanced AI hunters designed to track and destroy the small human drones. It should have worked. It would have worked against the drones from 3 months ago, but humanity had been adapting too. The new drones were smarter, faster, and operated in coordinated swarms that confused the Council's targeting systems. More importantly, they weren't trying to destroy ships, they were targeting specific systems. Hundreds of drones swept through the Council formation. Some fired electromagnetic pulse weapons that disrupted shield generators. Others deployed adhesive nets that covered sensor arrays. A few even latched onto ship hulls and became temporary jamming stations. The Council fleet began experiencing communication problems. Ship-to-ship coordination became difficult. Some vessels stopped receiving commands altogether. The rigid formation started to break apart as individual captains made their own decisions. That's when the real attack began. Captain Amy Parker led a strike force of 15 fast attack ships, including the USS Apollo. They had been hiding in the shadow of Mars, cold and silent. Now they burned at maximum acceleration toward the Council fleet's flank. "All ships, target their command vessels," Amy ordered. "Railguns, maximum rate of fire." The human ships opened up with their kinetic weapons. Solid metal projectiles crossed space at impossible speeds, punching through shields that weren't designed to stop them. 3 Council command ships took critical damage before they could react. Corvan's dreadnought shuddered as a railgun round tore through one of the main sensor arrays. "Return fire! All ships, concentrate on the human attack group!" But concentrating fire required coordination, and coordination required communication. Half his fleet couldn't hear the order. The other half had their sensors jammed or damaged. Individual ships fired independently, wasting energy on targets that were already gone. Commander Greg Holland commanded a mixed squadron of human and Chirrut vessels. The Chirrut ships were small but incredibly maneuverable. Built by a species that had evolved in the dense atmosphere of a gas giant, they could pull turns that would crush a human crew. Greg's group hit the Council fleet from above, diving down through their formation like predatory birds. They didn't stay to fight. They struck fast, targeting shield generators and weapon systems, then climbed away before the enemy could respond. "This is insane," one of the Chirrut captains said over the comm. "We're gnats biting a giant." "Enough gnats can kill a giant," Greg replied. "Keep moving. Don't let them pin you down." The battle became a swirling chaos that the Council had never experienced. They were used to orderly engagements where the stronger force won through superior firepower. This was nothing like that. Enemies came from every direction, struck, and vanished. Small ships exploited gaps in coverage. Drones disabled critical systems. Nothing stayed still long enough to target properly. Dr. Lisa Crawford monitored the battle from Earth, analyzing the data streams. She had helped design many of the tactics being used, drawing on her knowledge of Earth's natural world. Humanity had learned warfare from watching predators and prey, from studying how weak animals survived against strong ones. "The Council ships are starting to cluster together," she reported to Admiral Ryan Bennett. "They're trying to protect each other. That's what we want," Ryan said. He opened a channel to a special task force waiting near Jupiter. Commander Holland, execute Phase 2. The clustered council ships thought they were safer together. They could cover each other's blind spots, concentrate their firepower, but clustering also made them a bigger target, and they'd forgotten about the oldest human weapons. Greg's squadron released their payload. Not missiles or drones, but simple rocks, asteroids that had been harvested from the belt and accelerated to high velocity. They weren't guided, didn't have any technology at all, just mass and momentum. The asteroids hit the clustered council formation like cosmic shotgun blasts. Shields designed for energy weapons struggled against solid objects. Ships took damage. Some collided with each other trying to evade. The neat defensive cluster became a tangle of confused vessels. Captain Jack Morrison saw the opening. Valiant and all heavy units, we're going in. Target the dreadnought. The human heavy cruisers, supported by the largest compact vessels, charged directly at Corvan's flagship. It was the kind of head-on attack the Council expected and understood. Finally, a fight they could win. All weapons, fire on those ships, Corvan ordered. Destroy them. The dreadnought's main guns powered up, enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. They targeted the Valiant, locked on, and fired, but the Valiant wasn't there anymore. Jack had cut thrust at the last second, letting momentum carry his ship sideways, while his maneuvering thrusters pushed him off the original course. The massive energy beam missed by 100 meters. The human heavy ships opened fire with everything they had. Railguns, missiles, lasers, particle beams. The dreadnought's shields flared bright as they absorbed the punishment. The shields held, but barely. Sir, shield strength at 40%, Corvan's officer reported. If we take another volley like that, we'll lose them. Corvan made a decision he'd never thought he would make. All ships, fall back to Rally Point Theta. We need to regroup. The Council fleet began a fighting withdrawal, trying to restore their formation and coordination. But the compact forces didn't let them retreat cleanly. They harried the enemy every step of the way, like wolves chasing a wounded prey. After 4 hours of brutal combat, the Council fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the solar system. They had taken severe damage, lost several ships, and achieved nothing. The mighty Council armada had been driven off by a coalition of species they'd dismissed as inferior. Admiral Ryan Bennett stood in silence, watching the sensor screens clear as the last enemy ship vanished. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had actually won. Captain Jack Morrison's face appeared on the command screen. His ship was damaged but intact. Admiral, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. Species that weren't part of the compact are asking about joining. A lot of them. Ryan nodded slowly. They had done more than win a battle. They had proven that the Council's way wasn't the only way. They had shown that cooperation and adaptability could triumph over raw power. 5 years after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy looked very different. The Council still existed, but its absolute authority had crumbled. The Terran Compact had grown from 23 species to over 70, representing billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Captain Jack Morrison stood in the observation deck of Humanity's Hope, a massive space station positioned at the crossroads of several major trade routes. The station served as the Compact's headquarters, a symbol of the new order they were building together. From this vantage point, Jack could see ships from dozens of species coming and going. Sivari merchant vessels trading with Delphine explorers. Chirrux science ships working alongside human research teams. Even some Korthax vessels, from the faction that had broken away from the Dominion after their defeats. Hard to believe it's only been 5 years, Admiral Ryan Bennett said, joining Jack at the window. Ryan had retired from active military command 2 years ago, but he still served as an advisor to the Compact Defense Force. Sometimes I wonder if we did the right thing, Jack admitted. We broke the old order, but what we built to replace it is still fragile. There are conflicts everywhere. Border disputes, trade arguments, cultural misunderstandings. The galaxy is messier now. Ryan nodded. It is messier, but it's also freer. People can choose their own path now. Even if that path is difficult, that's worth something. The transition hadn't been easy. When the Council's authority collapsed, old grudges and territorial disputes resurfaced. Species that had been kept in check by the Council's military might began pushing against their neighbors. The Compact spent as much time mediating conflicts as they did defending against Council hardliners. Dr. Lisa Crawford had become the Compact's chief diplomatic officer. She traveled constantly, helping different species understand each other, finding common ground, and preventing small disagreements from becoming wars. It was exhausting work, but she believed in it. Today she was on the planet Sivara Prime, meeting with Ambassador Velana. The Sivari had been among humanity's first allies, and their relationship had only grown stronger. Velana was older now, her gray skin showing more age marks, but her eyes remained bright with intelligence. "The Council is making another move," Velana said, sharing intelligence her network had gathered. "They're forming what they call a security coalition. The Vrin, what remains of the Korthax Dominion, and several other major powers. They claim it's to restore order and protect against pirates and raiders. But it's really about reasserting control," Lisa finished. "How many ships? 3,000 at minimum. They're calling it a peacekeeping force, but we both know better." Lisa sat back, processing the information. The Compact had maybe 800 military vessels, and most of those were converted civilian ships with limited combat capability. In a direct military confrontation, they would lose. "We can't match them in firepower," Lisa said. "We never could. We need to find another way." Back on Earth, President Daniel Hayes was serving his final year in office. He had guided humanity through its most transformative period. But he was tired. The weight of reshaping galactic politics had aged him beyond his years. He met with Admiral Ryan Bennett in the same office where they had planned humanity's defense 5 years ago. The room looked the same, but everything else had changed. "The Council wants their power back," Hayes said, reviewing the intelligence reports. "They're calling what we built chaos and disorder. Some people agree with them. Even within the Compact, there are voices saying maybe the old way was better. At least it was stable." "Stability built on submission isn't real stability," Ryan replied. "It's just delayed conflict. The Council kept species in line through fear and force. That was always going to break eventually. We just accelerated the timeline." Hayes rubbed his eyes. "So what do we do? Fight another war? We barely survived the last one, and we were facing a fraction of their current forces." "We don't fight them militarily," Ryan said. "We show the galaxy why the Compact's way is better. We prove that cooperation creates more value than domination." End quote. Over the next year, the Compact launched an ambitious program. Instead of building more warships, they built infrastructure, trade networks that connected dozens of species, scientific research stations where different cultures worked together on problems none could solve alone, educational exchanges that helped younger generations learn from each other. Captain Amy Parker commanded the Compact's Rapid Response Fleet. Her job wasn't to fight wars, but to help species in crisis. When a plague hit the Drell homeworld, she arrived with medical ships crewed by human doctors, Sivari scientists, and Delphine pharmaceutical experts. Together, they stopped the disease in weeks. When pirates began raiding the shipping lanes near the Chirrut territories, Amy's fleet didn't just hunt the pirates. They helped the Chirrut build their own defense infrastructure, training their crews and providing technology. The Chirrut learned to protect themselves, and the pirates moved on to easier targets. Commander Greg Holland took a different approach. He had left the military and started a civilian organization called the Bridge Initiative. Its purpose was simple: help different species understand each other at a fundamental level. Greg traveled to worlds that were considering joining the Compact, not to recruit them, but to listen. He learned about their concerns, their fears, their hopes. He helped them see what membership could offer while being honest about the challenges. "The Compact isn't perfect," he would tell them. "We have conflicts and disagreements. Species don't always get along, but we resolve our problems through dialogue and compromise, not through force. You have a voice here. You have a choice. The approach worked slowly but effectively. Species joined the compact, not because they were forced, but because they saw the benefits. They saw species prospering through trade. They saw scientific breakthroughs achieved through collaboration. They saw that being small or weak didn't mean being powerless. The Council watched these developments with growing alarm. Their security coalition was ready. Their fleets assembled. But they faced a problem. Who would they attack? The compact had no central capital, no single world that could be conquered to force surrender. It was a network, not a hierarchy. War Master Corvan, who had been promoted despite his defeat at Seoul, proposed a strategy. We isolate them. We cut off trade routes, blockade key systems, and slowly strangle their economy. Without resources, the compact will collapse from within. The Council began implementing the plan. Their fleets established checkpoints on major trade routes, demanding tolls and inspections. Ships traveling to compact worlds faced delays and harassment. Some were turned away entirely. It should have worked. Economic pressure over time could break alliances that military force could not. But the Council had misunderstood what held the compact together. It wasn't just economic benefit, it was principle. When the blockades went up, compact species found alternative routes. They shared resources freely rather than hoard them. Human engineers helped Sivari shipwrights design faster vessels that could outrun Council patrols. Delphine navigators mapped new paths through dangerous space that larger Council ships couldn't follow. The blockade became a sieve, ineffective and expensive to maintain. The Council was spending enormous resources, achieving very little. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Species within the Council's own territory began questioning why they supported the blockade. The economic disruption hurt them too. Trade that had benefited both sides was now cut off. Scientific collaboration that had advanced everyone was forbidden. A delegation of Council member species, led by moderate factions within the Vryn and Korthax, approached President Hayes with a proposal. They wanted to negotiate a formal peace treaty that would recognize both the Council and the Compact as legitimate governing bodies. Hayes brought Admiral Ryan Bennett, Dr. Lisa Crawford, Captain Jack Morrison, and other Compact leaders to the negotiation table. The meetings took place on a neutral station, with both sides bringing their best diplomats. Ambassador Zekthar represented the Council hardliners. He looked at the humans with barely concealed disgust. 5 years hadn't changed his fundamental belief that they were inferior beings who had disrupted the natural order. This treaty would recognize your compact's right to exist, Zekthar said. In exchange, you will cease expansion and interference in Council affairs. Each side keeps what they have. No more growth, no more recruitment, Lisa Crawford responded calmly. The compact doesn't expand through conquest or coercion. Species join because they choose to. We won't agree to turn away those seeking freedom and cooperation. Then we have no agreement, Zekthar said flatly. But a Vryn diplomat named Karel, representing the moderate faction, spoke up. Perhaps there is middle ground. The compact continues to accept new members, but the Council has the same right to recruit. Let species choose. Let the competition be peaceful rather than military. Jack Morrison leaned forward. You're proposing we prove which system works better through results rather than warfare. Exactly, Karel said. If the Council's hierarchical approach is superior, species will choose it. If the compact's cooperative model is better, they will choose that instead. Let time and choice be the judge. The negotiations continued for 3 months. Finally, they produced the Treaty of Nexus, named for the Council's home world. It established 3 key principles. First, both the Council and the Compact were recognized as legitimate governing structures. Second, no military action would be taken to force species to join either side. Third, disputed territories would be resolved through arbitration rather than warfare. Not everyone was happy with the treaty. Council hardliners felt betrayed. Some Compact members worried it gave the Council too much legitimacy. But most people on both sides were simply tired of conflict and ready for peace, even imperfect peace. 5 years after the treaty, Jack Morrison retired from active duty. The Valiant, his beloved ship, was placed in orbit around Earth as a museum. Millions of people visited each year to see the vessel that had defended New Horizon and fought at the Battle of Seoul. Jack spent his retirement teaching at the Terran Military Academy, which had expanded to include students from over 40 species. He taught them not just tactics and strategy, but the philosophy behind them. Never let anyone tell you what you can or can't be based on what you are, he would tell each new class. Biology is just a starting point. What matters is what you choose to do with what you have. Adapt. Innovate. Never stop becoming. Admiral Ryan Bennett wrote his memoirs in a quiet house overlooking the Pacific Ocean. He titled the book, The Underestimated, and dedicated it to all the species who had been told they were inferior and proved otherwise. Dr. Lisa Crawford continued her work building bridges between species. She had helped establish a Council Compact exchange program where young beings from both sides lived and worked together. Slowly, understanding grew. Old prejudices began to fade. President Daniel Hayes lived to see humanity's next generation take leadership roles across the galaxy. Human diplomats, scientists, and officers served alongside beings from hundreds of different worlds. The species that had been rejected from the Galactic Council now helped shape the future of entire sectors. Captain Amy Parker became the first human to command a truly multi-species fleet, with crews from 20 different worlds serving on vessels designed through collaborative engineering. Her flagship wasn't named after a human concept or hero. It was called Unity, and it represented everything the Compact stood for. Commander Greg Holland's Bridge Initiative grew into a galactic institution. Cultural centers on 100 worlds helped beings understand each other. The conflicts that did arise were usually resolved through dialogue before they became violent. The galaxy didn't transform overnight. Old hatreds and suspicions took generations to heal. The Council never fully accepted the Compact as equals, and some Compact species never trusted the Council's intentions. But they learned to coexist, to compete peacefully, and sometimes to cooperate on challenges that affected everyone. On the 50th anniversary of First Contact, a ceremony was held on Earth. Representatives from both the Council and the Compact attended. They unveiled a monument in Geneva, a sculpture showing beings from different species reaching toward the stars together. Ambassador Velana, now very old, gave the dedication speech. 50 years ago, humanity was told they were too weak to matter. They proved that strength comes in many forms. They showed us that being underestimated is not a disadvantage if you refuse to accept limitations. They taught us to adapt, to cooperate, to believe in ourselves. The galaxy is better because humans dared to strike back against dismissal and prejudice. May we never forget that lesson. Jack Morrison, also old now, stood in the crowd watching the ceremony. Beside him stood Amy Parker, Greg Holland, and Lisa Crawford. The team that had helped change everything. Do you think it was worth it? Amy asked quietly. All the struggle, the battles, the years of conflict? Jack looked at the diverse crowd, at beings from hundreds of worlds gathered in peace. He saw young people of different species talking and laughing together, making friendships that would have been impossible before. Yes, he said simply. We gave them a choice. We gave them hope. We showed them another way. That's always worth fighting for. The galaxy didn't believe in humans until they struck back. And in striking back, humanity didn't conquer or dominate. They inspired. They showed that the only limits that truly matter are the ones we accept for ourselves. They proved that cooperation could triumph over hierarchy, that diversity was strength, and that even the smallest and weakest could change the course of history if they refused to give up. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. Every generation would face new challenges, new conflicts, new opportunities to build something better. But now they faced those challenges together, with the understanding that no species was inherently superior or inferior. They were all just beings trying to make their way in a vast and complicated universe. And that, Jack Morrison thought, as he watched the stars above Geneva, was exactly as it should be, but he also knew this was just the beginning. The Council wouldn't accept this defeat. They would come back, better prepared. The galaxy was changing, and change was never peaceful. "Send word to all Compact members," Ryan said. "We've won the battle, but the real work starts now. We need to build something that can last. Something worth fighting for." President Daniel Hayes addressed the world that night. People gathered in streets and homes across Earth, watching their leaders speak about what had happened. "Today, we proved something important," Hayes said. "Not that humans are superior, but that no one is inferior. Every species has value. Every people deserves the right to determine their own fate. The galaxy tried to put us in a box, to tell us what we could and couldn't be. We refused. And when we refused, others found the courage to refuse too. Together, we're building a new future. One based on cooperation, not domination. On respect, not fear. The road ahead will be difficult, but we will walk it together." Were converted merchant vessels. But they were there, ready to fight for something bigger than themselves. "All ships, this is Admiral Bennett." Ryan's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. "The Council fleet is approaching. They expect us to surrender, or run. They believe might makes right, that the strong deserve to rule, and the weak deserve to serve. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show the galaxy that there's another way. Hold the line." The Council fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, hundreds of ships arranged to inspire fear and awe. At their head was a massive Vryn dreadnought, its crystalline hull gleaming in the light of Sol. War Master Korvan, who had replaced the disgraced Gorath, opened a communication channel. "Humans and their misguided allies. This is your final chance. Surrender now or be destroyed." Admiral Ryan Bennett replied with 5 words that would echo through history. "The galaxy is changing. Adapt." The surviving Korthax ships, 20 of them severely damaged, fled into faster-than-light travel. They left behind the wreckage of their pride and the bodies of their certainty. The mighty Korthax Dominion had been beaten by the weakest species in the galaxy. Captain Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the enemy flee. His ship had taken some damage, but nothing critical. More importantly, not a single human had died. The colonists of New Horizon were safe. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy," Lieutenant Karen Bell reported. Everyone was watching. The entire council saw what just happened. Jack nodded slowly. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in a way that couldn't be ignored. They weren't the weak, primitive species the council had dismissed. They were something new, something unexpected, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. "We can't fight them," one general said. "We should accept the council's original offer. Protection is better than extinction." But Admiral Ryan Bennett stood up, his jaw set. The room erupted in arguments, but Ryan's voice cut through the noise. "They see us as weak because we're not like them. Fine. We'll use that. They expect us to roll over or die trying. We'll do neither." 70. President Hayes looked at Ryan carefully. "What are you proposing?" "We change the rules of the game.